Hi, Rhonda. Can you hear us all right?
Yes, I can.
Sounds
Hi,
great.
everyone.
Thank you.
Good evening. Hello. Okay, I call to order City Council meeting for the city of Petoskey for a special work session for October 23rd, 2023. I ask that you rise with me for the pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Miss Beck, would you please call roll?
Moore, present. Shields.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
Walker is absent and Murphy.
Present, we have a quorum. Tonight, the old business is to discuss on short-term rental regulations as it pertains to zoning, licensing, application, process, and enforcement. Before I do this, though, I'm going to give, if there's somebody in the public which wishes to speak public comments that's not related to this topic, you have that opportunity to do that now with council. If there is, I'm asking that you give your full name and full address, and you can have the mic for up to 5 minutes. Does anybody wish to speak? Then we'll cross that off the board and we'll move back to old business, discussing that this is not going to be an adopted or a resolution process. This work session is for the discussion, to do clarification. And if it comes to that, we will then schedule it for one of two meetings that would occur at this time at City Council. One would be a public hearing, a reading, and the second meeting could be a possible motion to accept or not. With that, I'm going to turn this over. Want me to just start and get going, or
Yeah,
do you want to do
you
it?
can go for it, yeah.
Yeah,
I can introduce
Okay.
Rhonda if you want.
please introduce our attorney.
Yeah, tonight we have joining us Rhonda Stowers from Plunkett Cooney remotely. Rhonda's been with, she can introduce herself, how long you've been with the firm, but we've had off and on discussions on various topics, but she'll be guiding us, helping us through this ordinance along with our city planners. So I don't know, Rhonda, if you just want to introduce yourself and maybe how long you've been with the firm.
Yeah, sure. I'm Rhonda Stowers. I've been with Plunkett Cooney for, oh gosh, this is my 23rd year. I started in June of 2002. So a long time working at Plunkett, doing various municipal things, ordinance drafting and things of that nature. So I'm looking forward to tonight's session.
Thank you.
Thank you for being aboard. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with each section, section 1A, and we'll move right on through them. At that point, council can make a discussion after we get through a few sections. If people wish to speak, I will give an opportunity rather than hold to the very end. Section 1. In council, I'm going to ask you to weigh in on this as we go. If you have some concerns about section 1, intent and purpose, is there anything that you are not happy with or wish to amend or have questions about section 15.1? Okay.
No,
Oh, she just said.
Okay. Let's go to section. She said no. Did she say no?
yeah, I think it's a clear statement of purpose. I think there is a balance that needs to be stricken between, providing value to the economy in terms of short-term rentals and income and tourism and drawing people to the area, but then also, having quality neighborhoods and a supply of housing is very important too. So I think this ordinance tries to strike a balance between very competing goals, both of which are desired.
Thank you. Section 15.2 is applicability. Council, I know we have some things in the future here, so I'm just going to continue to roll through this. If there are questions, we'll address them now. Is anybody on 15.2 applicability? Any questions or comments, council?
The only comment I'm going to make is it references the zoning ordinance, and I'm assuming we're going to discuss that later. So I have a couple comments on the zoning ordinance.
It's in the packet.
It's in the packet. Does it, okay,
I'd wait and go to that after we're done with this.
okay. Section 15.3 is definitions. Please look over that piece on definitions. At which point for definitions, I know, Mr. Moore, you have questions. Going down line 74 at 78 or so, you have some comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, under local agent, it says a local agent must have a key to the dwelling unit, must be able to respond to the short-term rental within 60 minutes to address issues, or must have arranged for another person to address issues within the same time frame. My suggestion, perhaps this third degree of separation from the owner is ill-advised, as it allows another layer of argument as to why somebody didn't respond when a response was required. Since you already have the owner and you have an agent, this puts another layer. So that was my comment there.
I saw where the city planner, John, I stated that that's acceptable to take out the line starting with or on through. Rhonda, you have comment on it? Have you received anything from us at this point? You've received all we have, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe I have everything. I don't have everything in front of me. My screen is kind of limited this evening, but in looking at it, the only concern that I would have is there may be a circumstance where either the owner or a local agent would have to designate someone to respond in an emergency basis if they're unavailable. You know, if worst case scenario, you know, the owner has COVID and can't come, and then something happens to the local agent, they're on vacation or whatever, and you need something done. I'd rather have them having some third person there than no one. But I think ideally, yes, you would have either the owner or the local agent responding.
Response, Mr. Shields.
Yeah, that's my thought. I mean, I agree it's ill-advised for the owner. Is it necessarily ill-advised for, I mean, the city would want a good response. But I feel like this document does a good job of putting that responsibility to the owner. So I guess my question would be, I mean, Mr. Moore, is your reading of including that line, does that mean, do you think there will be some more wiggle room for then when an owner is accused of a violation, that it could be some just cause, it could be loose in that area? Is that your thinking?
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess it depends too on how we're using local agent. If we have someone designated, whether it's, if we're talking designated on paper and on file, that might be a different situation than the owner designating anyone as a local agent. Because the minute they say, okay, you know, person X can't do it, so now we're going to have Mr. Smith do it, have they now designated a new local agent? And do we need language limiting them to a single local agent?
I don't know, do you have any comment?
I like Councilperson Demore's suggestion, and the only reason why is I have a situation where I'm familiar with, where we had a local agent, the owner of the local agent and a local agent had another designated party. And what happened was, just like we were talking about, the local agent and the owner were not available, and the person that they had asked to substitute in did not respond in a timely fashion, and it ended up being a situation where there's a lot of finger pointing. So when I read through what Councilman Demore had suggested, I thought, you know, that's probably pretty reasonable. is to have the owner and a local agent and leave it at that.
Okay,
Because some of these issues too, Your Honor, is that the local agent in some cases with these STRs is a real estate company. So it may not be, the local agent may be the real estate company who has multiple people that are going to be involved in the rental of the property.
okay.
So,
And Ms. Stowers, may I call you Rhonda?
Absolutely.
Feel free to call me Tina as well. Later in the document, we do have a provision where for licensing purposes, that agent is designated. And I think one of the proposals that was made by a member of the Planning Commission, and I support that, is that both that licensing agent and the owner sign that application. So I think that's helpful in terms of what you just brought up.
Okay. All in agreement, council. Moving on. You also highlighted maximum capacity. Defined by public safety. And I see you have questions about that.
Oh, mine was just a factual question. Does this, let's see, the number of it, yeah, does this currently exist? Because later it says that in the application, the person that applies has to, put down, we'll have to look at that later, but so I'm just curious, does this currently exist? And I asked later, like, how does an applicant access this, was my question.
And follow-up question is that I see that it asked the Department of Public Safety for input in setting that, but is that a policy question as well? I just a little bit of looking at other municipalities that sometimes that maximum is set by the elected board.
May I, Your Honor? This was an issue that was discussed by the subcommittee that worked on the ordinance. You have two components going on. First, you have the number of people that can reside in the STR overnight over a 24-hour period. That's determined primarily by the public safety department based on the number of bedrooms and ancillary sleeping facilities, like a hideaway bed and things like that. That's one determination of capacity. The second one is that someone rents an STR in town and then they invite their friends or family over for the day. Then you're going to have a different occupancy amount because you're going to have more people in the unit. And that's also got to be defined by public safety based on the fire code. Just like when you go into a restaurant, there's a sign saying the maximum capacity is, occupancy is. So we wanted to differentiate it both ways. So there would be an occupancy defined for the people that are going to reside there and an occupancy number if they invite guests over.
Yeah, I think this sort of morphs into the next section to kind of be discussed all at once. Because, there's questions about guests, occupants, and then later tenants. And so I think we need clarity, and I hope Rhonda can be helpful with this, because occupants is not defined and tenants isn't defined. Now, Mr. Angelo proposed definitions of those, but I'm not sure if we should have all those or they should all be tenants, or what your thoughts might be, because that ties into this as well.
Rhonda, do you have something to say on this?
It sounds to me, and from looking at it, it seems like tenants and occupants are kind of the same. It might provide clarity for tenants to be used over occupants. Unless we're going to define tenants very, very narrowly as the two individuals or individual that's renting. Tenants might be determined by the short-term rental agreements. And we may not want to relinquish that control. So there does at least need to be some clarity between an occupant and a tenant in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
Your Honor.
Please.
Rhonda, this is John, the planning consultant, city planner for the city. Technically, a short-term rental is a lease, isn't it not?
It would be a lease for less than 30 days.
Okay, so should we define leasee and then guests? So we differentiate between the people that are leasing the property versus the people that are coming over as guests and friends?
There may be multiple tenants, though, if you talk of just the leasee, is that one person? Versus the occupant or the tenant, which. I think that needs to be defined.
I think this is a critical discussion that we had at the steering committee, trying to differentiate the person or people that are renting versus the other people that are going to come over and could occupy the building during the day or in the evening if they came over for dinner. So we need to have the terminology between the two groups.
And I think clarity too, because maximum occupancy versus guests. Like if you're not at maximum occupancy, can guests stay? I don't know the answer from this.
I think in the definition, we at the committee, a couple of the committee members are here. We were thinking that at some point we probably, because common sense always doesn't prevail, that in the ordinance, whatever the definition was, we needed to put down a time frame that people that are coming over as guests are welcome to be at the facility between X number of time and they have to leave it in the evening. So we don't have the situation where people are out having backyard parties at 12 and 1 o'clock in the middle of the neighborhood. So keep that in mind as we think about these definitions.
Rhonda, anything?
We may want to require the short-term rental agreements that people enter into to list all of the people that are intended to be occupants, renters, however you want to phrase them, the group that stays overnight. So that we have some clarity when we go to a situation and there's occupants versus, guests, or occupants and guests, so that we know which is which.
I've had to fill that out when I go to either Arizona, Florida. When you rent a place for a short term, they require you to list who is going to be in that house with you, age, address, blah, blah, blah. They want information. They want to know exactly how many people are going to be in that house as short-term rentals that I've been involved with, because we had to each sign off on it. I think that's a good way to minimize issues when it comes up to who is really staying in here overnight. Who are the tenants versus who are the guests?
So I think ultimately we need clarity around occupant versus tenant,
Correct.
guest. Yeah, these issues that we've discussed.
So let's make note in that 82 area, 83 to 88, that there will be a definition of tenant and a definition of guest, occupant. Do you agree, counsel? Mr. Shields?
I'm sorry.
Yes, this is Derek. I'm not sure. I actually was thinking that's just too bureaucratic to separate those two, and that to rely on the ordinances of noise and nuisance to mitigate the things we are worried about and not worry about guests. But as I'm hearing the conversation, I've done Airbnbs and not had that experience where I've had to sign in, and would think that's an extra cumbersome bureaucratic layer that is unnecessary. And wondering what if we can achieve the same community control through this the ordinance design.
I think this would give public safety a big step forward when they arrive at a house and you've got 12 people there.
So they have to count people versus.
Well, they have a slip that says, this lease says, this rental agreement says there's 4 people here. The rest of you at 12 o'clock need to leave.
What I would say is that in my experience as a litigator and as a mediator, the more people have knowledge of the rules, the more there's compliance. When there's communication, people understand what's expected of them, then they follow through. Where there's confusion or things are ambiguous, that's generally where difficulty lies. So for my part, that's what I think is important about what we're doing right now, is to be real clear about what our consensus is as to, expectations.
One of the things that Sarah brought up was, we receive an application once a year for licensing. Are you saying that we would, each time this STR is rented, we would expect to see a roster of folks that are there, and then from a staff and administration standpoint, that seems a bit cumbersome.
That question is for Ms. Stowers. That was her
Rhonda?
question.
I don't know that it's necessary. I wouldn't think it would be necessary for the city to police how many are there and how many aren't there, because quite frankly, the owner of the short-term rental is going to have an interest in doing that. They're going to have an interest in limiting the number of guests to something that's reasonable and acceptable in that house for terms of, abilities and whatnot. I don't know that it's necessary, but I also don't think that it hurts that we make the distinction and advise that they are to continue to forward safety principles. Just like you have landlord tenant, and you have landlords who you would think would have an interest in protecting their tenants, but you see them violate safety rules. We want to make sure that these rentals are safe for the occupants and guests that are there.
Okay. Mr. Wagner.
In my sense, I've been a renter, I've been a renter, and my sense is if they're provided the guidance on how many occupants, how many guests, and that is in the documentation that goes to the renter.
Okay.
And maybe for the landlord, we expect them, require them to document who's coming in. Maybe it's just even in the application process, but it's not something that the city needs to be involved in directly. But if there's concern about what they're doing, we'd have the ability to go in and check their documentation. Because when I was a landlord with an Airbnb in Arizona, I definitely want to protect my own interests. And so, no dogs, no whatever, how many people are going to be staying there. That was important.
Okay.
I'm just satisfied if there's clarity in the ordinance between either occupant or tenant, one or the other, and then clarity about guests.
Okay.
And I keep hearing just 2 levels. You're an occupant or you're a guest.
Right.
Yeah,
It's really just-
occupant or tenant and
Yeah,
one of the other.
Okay, so we've got 2 definitions that we'll work out on that, would you, John? Okay. Good to move on then. Next, we drop down to short-term rentals at 94. I see that changes were suggested by you, Mr. Moore, for a term of less than 30 consecutive days.
Well, this is really again, more of a discussion I thought it was important for us to have. And that is the way this is written. It only governs short-term rentals that are less than 30 days. And my concern is this, like, what do we want to incentivize? When we did ADUs, the minimum period was 3 months. And the thinking was that would facilitate workforce housing. And so here, this opens up, if you're 30 days or more, the possibility that you don't have to utilize this process at all. So given summers up here, I mean, a 30-day Airbnb. So I guess just wanted to discuss from my perspective, I think it should be longer than that are governed here. And that was what I wanted to broach as a discussion for others' thoughts.
Okay, so your comments that we received for a term of less than 30 consecutive days, that's only one part of your question. The other question is possibly making that a longer term.
Yeah. That this governs short, we can, I mean, as best I know, and again, I defer to Rhonda, as best I know, we can govern short-term rentals as we deem appropriate. And I just thought less than 30 days was too short, because it opens up the possibility of completely unregulated 30-day or 30+ day Airbnb rentals. And what about that in the context of the need for workforce housing?
Feels.
Is there a benefit in being there more flexible for the 31 and 40 and on day rentals? Is there a benefit in allowing that and not restricting that? Same kind of question. Same question. Does it need to be, or is there a benefit in not doing that?
So if you rent for 45 days, you feel that would be, you are questioning Mr. Moore, if I own a place and I'm renting for 45 days, you feel that should qualify or be considered short term?
I would do it longer than less than
And
30.
what are your suggestions?
I'm open to discussion. I mean, I gave as an example what we did with ADUs, which was
90 days.
3 months. Yeah, 90 days. I mean, I welcome.
Mr. Wagner.
And my comment observation, I believe, and I'm not sure, there's a lot of discussion in Lansing about short-term rentals, and it's all, I believe, defined as 30 days and less. And it's because Airbnbs and VRBs are so lucrative when it's a weekend or a week and shorter. And so 30 is actually a stretch on people making a lot of money on a short-term rental.
Well, in the same way, I respectfully disagree with the 80 to 120% AMI being one size fits all. I think for our community, and the need for housing, workforce housing, I think this could be problematical, but.
City planner.
My observation is that you have different markets. You have a short-term rental market, you have an ADU market, and then you have workforce housing. If you take a look on Airbnb for the houses that are being rented here in Petoskey, some of them range $1,000 a night to $1,500 a week. If you extended that out if somebody wanted to rent that for workforce housing, they'd be paying $3,000 to $4,000 a month, maybe even $6,000, which is not workforce housing. So there's different components of the housing market. Short-term rental is one of those components. And as Councilman Wagner said, people tend to want to maximize the turnover in order to maximize the amount of income. So they either rent it on a weekend or they rent it on a weekly basis. And I guess if you can afford to rent it for a month, you're going to be paying quite a bit of money, way in excess of what the rates would be for typically for rent for workforce housing. So the other area too that I wanted to point out is for example, a lot of condominiums around this area have a stipulation that you can't rent unless it's more than 30 days. So they discourage short-term rentals, and they define it by you can only rent, a short-term rental is 0 or 1 to 29 days. Anything over 30 days, you have to have a lease, and it's got to be for X number of months. So
I think though you just made my argument, because under this, you could have short-term rentals that were 45 days that cost $4,000. That's what I'm trying to avoid. I'm trying to avoid that by making the period for short-term rentals that are governed by this longer.
If I'm the owner of a short-term rental and I'm going to maximize my income during the 3 or 4 month summer period, I am going to leverage as much income as I can on a per weekly basis. And that amount of money is not gonna, is not the amount of money that would be maximized or leveraged during that period of time isn't workforce housing.
I agree.
Yeah. So
I
by
agree.
extending it out to 45 days, the short-term rental owner, and I'm not one, if there's some here in the audience, I don't think they're gonna say, well, you want to rent it for 45 days. I'm gonna give you a discount on the rent. They're trying to make as much money
I know.
that they can during the shortest amount of time in the season. So I don't think they're gonna be giving discounts if you want to rent it longer. They're just gonna charge you that increment.
I'm not effectively communicating my position.
Okay.
The concern is that if there is someone out there who could have a 3-month rental and they're gonna not do that because now they could do a 45-month rental. That is 45-day rental. That's the concern. The concern is this would, if we bump it up to 60 or 90 days, do we protect the long-term rentals even further?
Yes. Thank you for the translation. Much appreciated.
If I could just say something too, currently we do not regulate or require long-term rentals, the 31 day or more to fill out an application, to pay a fee, anything like that. So if you so chose to extend this, I would imagine it would affect long-term rentals, like you just mentioned. Because if they're renting,
Go ahead.
well, I was just saying, like, if you're saying this is a 3-monther for short-term rentals, there's people that rent 3 months and that's considered long-term. And right now we don't regulate them to complete an application and get a license. So would it affect them and make the long-term renters comply to this ordinance if they rent for 3 months, let's say?
Rhonda, do you wish to weigh in, please?
I will say that 30 days is pretty standard. I mean, that's what the state's using. That's what other cities are using, other municipalities are using. If we go more than 30 days, it will be unusual because it's kind of no longer considered short term at that point. It's more like a month-to-month lease that then is subject to the Michigan Truth in Renting Act and things like that. I think that's kind of the general standard is they've always been, at least in the municipalities and proposed bills and things like that I've seen, it's always been under 30 days. That's not to say that you necessarily can't do it, but I think you might run into some of the other laws about landlord tenant and whatnot when you get over a 1 month period of time.
Mr. Shields.
Hearing that, I'm not in favor of changing it, and the concern is not justified the likelihood of impact. So I'm in favor of keeping it 30 days for consistency with every other agency at this point.
Ms. Demore.
I will go with the consensus of the group. I will indicate that in my notes, I said what you would do is carve out a month where it's a month-to-month extension of a longer lease. That would be a carve out, of course. But again, I go with the consensus.
Mr. Wagner.
For consistency, I like the 30 days, and I'm trying to think of all the scenarios of the traveling nurses and some other things who, 60 days is kind of what they need quite often. And that's important to our city. It's important to McLaren and so on. So I know there's a lot going on in Lansing. I don't know what all it is, but it's all 30 days or less.
City planner chairperson in the back of the room. would you, well, in your discussion, would you concur with that?
I think you can look at it, the short-term rental.
Can you speak?
Push the button.
Yes, sir.
Cynthia Robson.
Yeah, something interruption. What I would say is that the short-term rental is 30 days or less. Think of it like a product. So if you're a short-term rental, you can do it 30 days or less. If it's above 30 days, it's a normal rental. So if someone wants to rent month to month, they can do that. Most rentals, are a 12-month lease, but there's flexibility there. So like for short-term, for nurses, somebody traveling, it's 60 to 90 days or up to 6 months. So I really think of the short-term rental more as I would call it a product. So, make any sense?
Thank you for your input. At this point, with a consensus of 30 days, let's leave it at 30 days.
Mayor, with that,
Mr. Shields.
on short-term rental, that paragraph there, I don't see hostels or motels in the list. Does that list need to list every situation? Question.
So you're saying there's there's a hotel rooms, but not motel.
Right.
There's not.
Or, yeah, those are two example or thoughts I came up of, hostels and
Are
motels.
you good with adding those? Are you good with adding that, Mr. Wagner?
I'm okay. I would look for the STR's suggestions. I know similar things have come up before where it's not a comprehensive list.
Right.
It never can be. So I would question what needs to be there and what not.
Rhonda?
Yeah, it does say including, but not including these things. We may want to, what I would do is go through the other ordinances of the city and see what other types of similar businesses are defined and make sure that whatever businesses we want to carve out from this are carved out. If we don't have motels in another ordinance, for example, there's no need to include it here. But if we do have that somewhere else, it should be in this list if we're wanting it to not be included as a short-term rental.
City planner, would you follow through on that for us?
Yes, I'll make a scan.
Thank you, sir.
Back in June on our agenda on this issue, it said, the ordinance amendment includes a revised definition for a hotel and a new definition for a motel. Although the current ordinance references hotels and motels, there wasn't a definition for motel in the ordinance. So I have a question here too. Do we have a definition for employee housing?
I do not believe we have one in the ordinance.
I think that would be a good idea.
For council. Mr. Shields?
Yes.
Wagner?
I think that makes sense.
So. Got that. Okay. Are we including for a term of less than 30 consecutive days in the statement? I know that was added. Was that added or is that highlighted?
It's just highlighted.
It's
That's
just
the
highlighted.
language as it
Okay.
exists.
Moving on. Moving on to page 3. We're now on section 15.4 licensing. More, first, you had I'm gonna go to you because I've got the feedback in front of me. Council, if you wish to weigh in, of course, ahead of time, otherwise I'll move on. Okay. You have all short-term rental dwelling units shall have license annually. It's number
5. That was just a point of clarification.
Are you giving the clarification, council, the word annually put in there? Yes. Rhonda, are you?
Yeah, I think it makes sense to have annually in there.
John, okay?
Yes.
Leave it in. It's
Can I-
acceptable.
Let me just ask a couple constituent questions real quickly. I had a constituent want to confirm that the annual renewal process applies to all short-term rentals, including grandfathered properties.
Yes.
Okay. And second of all, I had a constituent suggestion about possibly adding a notice provision to the relicensing process, similar to what happens with bed and breakfast operations. In section 6.7, it says upon receipt of a completed hotel and bed and breakfast license application, the city shall notify all property owners within 300 feet of the bed and breakfast operation proposed location. The notice shall inform property owners of a 14-day period for comment to the city regarding the proposed operation. Again, this was a suggestion from a constituent. Oh, I'm sorry, a suggestion from a constituent just for discussion,
John,
input.
Can we discuss what that process would be if the city sends out a letter to surrounding properties within 300 feet and a 14-day notice period? Does that notice have to be before the planning commission or the city clerk, or who would be receiving the comments within the 14-day period?
I don't know that. I only know that's what they were referencing was the idea in the bed and breakfast. And if my memory serves me correctly, this suggestion came from somebody in a residential neighborhood with concerns around.
If I can make a comment, so I have done that and it is in the ordinance and it's bed and breakfast initial application. So there is a caveat in the ordinance for bed and breakfast that there can't be a licensed bed and breakfast within 500 feet of another one. So when there's a brand new one that applies, I notify 300 feet to all residents. They have a 14-day comment period to send any letters to the city manager's office. And then it's been done or approved administratively. So that is the process.
so you're asking for a renewal every time there's a renewal?
This
Again,
this was a constituent suggestion that I'm delivering, so I can't really tell you the details other to say that was their concern and they were requesting, is it possible that for short-term rentals, there be this type of notice as well? Again, just.
We do have public safety involved with recording any incidents at those locations. We have follow-up with the International Property Maintenance Code reports thereof that can go to the city. I would think that if there was issues with a place, that the city would know about it. But
Well, this isn't about the city knowing about it. This is about giving advance notice to someone nearby so they could offer input.
Mr. Shields,
One ordinance that I came across, they had the hosts, which we'd call the renters or leases, that they must notify the adjacent and abutting owners and occupants.
no,
So that could be part of something they sign, so they would do, put it on the host. I saw one ordinance do.
I don't feel I would want an individual going door to door and
Like to neighbors?
I don't think it, a lot of people may not be comfortable. Maybe there's an individual, they've had issues over snow in their driveway or something. I think it should, if it is at all, it should be done by the city with notifications, taking people to people out of that neighbor to neighbor. I just don't think, I think we're asking for more trouble than we more trouble with that. Rhonda?
Yeah, my thought is because this is an annual thing and we actually have a time schedule built into our ordinance that they're required to provide all their materials by December 1st. Maybe January 2nd, we do a publication. Here are the applications that we've received for which properties. And then they can come to the public hearing where we decide whether to renew licenses. Or at least the list could be presented at the first meeting in January, say, so that people are aware, you know, these are the properties that are under consideration.
City Manager Horn.
On that, that's typically something we do administratively, as long as they're within our ordinance, we administratively do that. However, obviously, it's up to the council how they want to do that. I was just gonna say, we get complaints often on STRs. We obviously log those. When the renewals come forward, we have record of those complaints. I would say if this is something council wants to do from a notification standpoint, we're certainly going to have to increase fees to pay for staff and postage. It's certainly something that I don't believe we should absorb that cost. We should, if that's something we want to do, that cost should be passed on. This is a business, so.
What is the cost right now?
Of the application.
Application for short term.
If it's a brand new one in an allowed district, it's $225,
And the renewal?
$175.
Well, I don't believe I've ever sat here and we've had any discussion on
Yeah.
renewals of, we have not had any discussions on renewal of short terms that I've been
No.
here long enough to know. We haven't done that.
No.
No, but it's done through the budget resolution, the schedule of fees that you guys get. That's the only.
No, I'm not talking of the fees, I'm talking of the review of renewal applications. We don't do that.
Oh, no, sorry. Like you said,
John,
administratively.
Sorry.
No, this is really an administrative licensing procedure. It's not a special land use which requires notification and public hearing. And I don't think, I've never seen an STR where you have a public hearing every year on the licensing. It's not a zoning issue.
Right.
This is a licensing issue.
Mhm.
So I think as the city manager says, if a neighbor has a concern, they call and they make a complaint and it's addressed accordingly.
I don't see anything in here about a hearing. I just see something in here about notice, giving people notice so they have an opportunity to be heard. And again, I think this was just a point of reference, not that we should do exactly what's done here.
Uh-huh.
But
If we do that, we're talking of needing to jack the fee up according to what the cost is gonna be to the city staff to distribute, mail out, collect.
well, I think Rhonda was saying something about publication.
Yeah, my thought was just, you know, January 2nd, for example, if everything's in by December 31st, the first week of January, just post a list. Here's the list of the applications that we got. And it could just be posted at City Hall and interested people can come and find out what properties had an STR application made. And it would just be the list of the properties. And then if they want more information, then they can inquire.
That's reasonable, covers. Are you good with that, council, Mr. Steels?
Yes.
Mr. Wagner?
Is that, I'm looking at Sarah and Shane, is that realistic?
Yeah, then we can,
No, without big fees or anything else, I mean.
yeah, just posting it, that's fine.
That eliminates the 300-foot mail out. Yeah, okay.
Might I also follow up and ask, when can we have discussion about these fees for applications? Given the amount that short-term rentals charge, these seem like rates maybe from 1980 or.
You're gonna have that opportunity on the 6th of November. Well,
Okay.
it won't be on the 6th, I guess, probably the second meeting in November, but around budget, when you see the budget, you're gonna get rates, fees, schedules, and that's when you're gonna be able to give us that feedback on rates.
That'll be included in a long list of
I know.
costs from renting
Yes.
the gazebo to
So,
closing a street.
so note to selves, can we remember to
Mhm.
talk about that? Okay.
We'll see it.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving right along. I see on line 4. Must deliver the word on line 116, the word all was suggested. Is that right? Are you good with that, council?
Yes.
Okay, so that word all on line 116 would go after must deliver all the required documents for clarification. Line 119, license renewals that are not submitted on or before December 31st. Are you good with changing the word from by to on or before?
Yes.
Yes.
Next, number 6, maybe more discussion. Number 6. City planner looked at your recommendations, Ms. Demore.
So I absolutely defer with due respect to Rhonda on this. When I looked at it, it just looked like kind of a hot mess and a potential, and I say that respectfully, really, with a potential for a lot of arguments about, why it wasn't delivered. So I was just trying to simplify and say if it's not received. But again, I defer to Rhonda's expertise on whatever she thinks about this.
Rhonda, you saw what Ms. Demore did with the number 6, 121.
It certainly adds a lot of clarity. And this isn't quite like, and I understand the idea of going to the IRS regs and saying, okay, as long as it's postmarked by, and sometimes we do that with property taxes as well, as long as it's postmarked by a certain date. But these are short-term rentals in the city. It's a designated date. It's not like it sneaks up on you. You have to have your stuff in November 1st to December 31st. And it clarifies that, it needs to be in by a particular day. There shouldn't be an issue with compliance with that per se. And I think it does make it a lot cleaner to do it that way.
Cleaner to do it, what was suggested, you mean?
That it has to be received by a certain date as opposed to mailed by a certain date.
Right. Okay.
And then I guess I should also add that that reference, if all of the foregoing, I just made a note that, sorry, I have to look at where that note is. It says if all of the foregoing is not delivered, but there's nothing preceding that indicating what is to be delivered. And I just suggested that should follow section 7. And I think that was one that Mr. Icoangelo felt was acceptable.
And I had made the same note as well.
Mhm.
If I may, Your Honor,
Yeah,
and this is
please.
not, we shouldn't have this in the ordinance, but I think when the application is designed, we should have in bold letters at the bottom of the application that unless the application is received at City Hall by this date, it will not be accepted, because we're saying that they can't submit it via electronic submission. We have to make sure that we don't get caught where somebody said, well, I mailed it using United Parcel, next day delivery. And if it doesn't show up here, we have to make sure that there's something on that they sign, they acknowledge that if it's not physically at City Hall on that date, then they lose their opportunity for a license. I had a community where because of that, there was potential litigation. Somebody had mailed it, they had proof that they mailed it. The municipality never received it. And you're talking a business license, and there was a lot of concern over it. So we have to be very clear, and maybe the way to do it is in the application itself, that we have it bold enough, and maybe we require them to initial it, that they understand that if it's not physically at City Hall by that date, they could lose their license.
You can have it in both places too.
Yeah. I mean, if the attorney wants to recommend something, the language in the ordinance, then we can just take it from the ordinance and put it on the app. But it's got to be someplace.
Right.
Yeah,
I prefer both places. Who said?
I didn't have.
Mr. Shields.
Yeah, I have a similar thought, yeah, it is messy and complicated, but my feeling was allowing for a postmark was important because of, well, we're not allowing any, a month late fee. So there's no, and some city ordinances where this do allow, okay, you're a month late, you got an extra fee, but we'll still process it. So I don't see that being allowed, and I'm not necessarily supporting that. But the month of December in the mail postal system can be messy. And this is and we're talking about some people's invest a lot of their own money and time into their short-term rentals to have us deny it because of a postal failure, and they can prove that they postmarked beforehand.
But that postal failure is not that's not the city's problem. It was the type of delivery that you have selected. If you hired the kid next door to bring it down and he didn't, do we say, oh, Johnny Smith's mom signed it that he was to bring it down and forgot to, and sure it is, or he's going to bring it the next day. I think to leave it clean and cut. If it's not here December 31st when we close the doors, it's out.
Sure, but this is a legitimate way of delivering important mail through many industries around our country.
You would go with certified or registered mail.
Well,
For the amount of money that is made on rentals, I think asking them to either have certified, that means you're going to get it and you're going to sign for it, and you're going to know it right back. I think to just leave it the way it is right in there, but I'm willing to listen.
That's what we just said.
just throwing that counter perspective out there.
Yeah, Mr. Wagner.
I'm seeing some discussion over there. I'd like to hear.
We've added New Year's Eve as a official holiday, so we're not even open on the 31st. So that's a
Good to know.
problem that we would have to address.
Well, we can put
We
December
can put
30th.
December 30th
Yeah.
on there. Are you good with December 30th? Let's put December 30th. So what happens if December 30th is on a Saturday?
I mean, at some point,
Doesn't matter. It's on or before
yeah,
December
it's
30th.
the date's the date.
I'm hoping as I go on December 30th, if it's a Saturday and we're not open for it.
Then it's not
You
received.
should get here before, the last regular business day. We can't, in my mind, we can't continue to hold hands. This is a business. They need to treat it like a business. Don't wait to the last day. Don't wait to the last hour. If it's so important to them, do it ahead of time. Don't put our staff at a position where now we're scrambling. We've got to man the door. We have to have somebody here.
I'm great with December 30th. Are you okay? Mr. Wagner?
I actually like the added language that Shay just said on the last business day on or before. So if the Saturday, the 30th is out, it's got to be the 29th.
So it would stay on or before the last business
On
closed.
and before the last
The
business.
close of business.
And I'm learning from you and needing perfect clarity.
The close of business.
I apologize.
On or before the close of business.
Well, Rhonda will assist us with
Rhonda,
this language.
throw it at us, Rhonda.
And the only concern that I have with that is it provides a moving target.
True.
Now you never have the set date. It's always, okay, what is it this year? What is it next year? It moves things around. And if we start the process on November 1st, there shouldn't be any reason why it takes to December 30th or the last business day preceding the end of the year, or then you're getting disputes about, is it the fiscal year or the calendar year? I personally would recommend keeping the December 30th date and just having it. And quite frankly, you could have litigation either way. I can see people saying, look, I mailed it. Here's my proof. But in that instance, their litigation is with their deliverer. Whereas if you have the city accepting what others might view as a late petition. Now you've got people on the waiting list or the next person in the license line saying, hey, I should have got this license. Theirs was late. It expired. And now you have that fight on your hands.
Okay. You're good with the number 30? Yes,
Okay.
I have a thumbs up, okay.
I mean, to Derek's point, kind of countering it a little bit and trusting that the postal code or postal date is whatever and avoiding that concern. I like the fact that if I'm the owner and I mail it in December 1st, I'm probably going to want to, if I haven't heard anything, check with the city, and it might be a little bit of a hassle, but it's on me to do that. And if they haven't received it, I'm gonna ship it overnight, I'm gonna carry it in, I'm gonna do something.
I can't believe that somebody would not either bring it here or a certified letter with it, so you've got signature. It just doesn't make sense that somebody would take that chance. So let's just put it at 30. The corrections were made that were corrected in red. You've got those.
And just confirming too, that this section then will follow section 7 as Rhonda referenced, because when it says all of the foregoing, there's no foregoing before that. So that's just like a cleanup.
Okay. All right. All right, so now let's go to 7 and finish that. There are a couple of spots there. A person seeking short-term under the shall submit to the city a complete short-term rental application signed would be listed. And certified as well as being true by the applicant and the designated local agent. Is that those changes, are those good, Rhonda? Or do you have a better idea?
I would capitalize local agent because we do have that term defined in there. I'm just looking to see if we have a requirement as to who's applicant. I mean, are we requiring the owner to be the applicant?
That's my recollection.
We can put that in as applicant, as a definition, is it already in?
Rhonda, I think 7A addresses what you just mentioned.
There it is.
Yeah, okay. I thought it would be in there somewhere. I just
Yeah,
didn't have my eyes on it. So yeah.
I just want to give credit to Charlie Wilmot, well, he was with us, but this was his suggestion that this be signed by both the licensee and the local agent, which I think is a really good
I
idea.
think that's appropriate because somebody should just put somebody's name down there, and then the public safety calls somebody and they go, the realtor office, and they go, I haven't got a clue about this, so I think it's great to have them both signed. Are you good with that, council? Okay, we've got a 4 of us. Now moving down 10, insert city clerk. Where's that gonna be?
This was just a statement about the application shall include all the information specified on the short-term rental application form and any other information deemed reasonably necessary. And my question was, who determines if additional information is reasonably necessary? It seemed pretty vague.
Okay,
What was the thought process here was my question and point of discussion.
I'm okay inserting city clerk. Let's look at that where you have the number, hard to read, 10 green would continue with the word by necessary by the city clerk. You good with that, council? Moving on. I don't see any concern. Do you have any concerns on A, B, C? Yep, there's some.
The reason I raise this issue in C is this is part of their application that they have to list, or this is my understanding, they have to list the total number of allowable applicants as determined by the Department of Public Safety. And I just didn't know how the applicant would know this in order to fill that out on the application.
Based on the fire code, I'm good. Are you good with adding that, Rhonda?
Yeah, but that's after the fact.
Yeah, I mean, I think they might be able to put total number of beds. And then the Department of Public Safety can make a determination whether or not the number of maximum allowable occupants is safe.
That would be a part of the application itself. A line on the application.
Well, I think it's important for the applicant to state how many occupants they expect to have in any particular short-term rental.
I agree.
Should it be what the number that they propose or the total number that are allowed? I'm just, as a practical matter, trying to understand how this person filling out the application knows the total number that are allowed. I mean, I don't know the answer to that question. How do they know that?
Well, and I think the idea here, at least for as I read it, you have the number of bedrooms, but that's not necessarily the number of sleeping occupants that you could have, because you might have a hideout, a hideaway bed, or a full pull-out, or a futon, or something of that nature. So,
Right, but Rhonda, this number 7 reads, the license application form shall collect not less than the following information. That's in part. And then it says C, the number of bedrooms in each dwelling unit and the total number of allowable applicants as determined by the Department of Public Safety.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I am a owner of a property in a B3 zone. I've asked a few questions over chat as they've been relevant, and I don't know if there's a better time to address them, but I had a question on this specifically.
So I'm gonna mute her and
I think we go back, we need to keep working through this.
Okay, what I will do, I will allow public comment after this section 15.4. We will get down to the end of 15.4, which brings us to 15.5, which will be the waiting list. I'm going to ask that you hold your question until we get through with this and we can come back to it. It's otherwise, we're not going to get anywhere with this. Moving on.
I think John.
John,
I
please.
think you have an application process where the person fills out an application and they have to submit it by December 30th or before. Then there's the review period where public safety goes out and makes the inspection. And then during that inspection process, that's when they determine the number of applicants. And then after
That's
that's
the number
done,
of
that's when
applicants, the number of occupants.
that's number of occupants, excuse me. And then after that's completed, if everything is satisfied, then that's when the license is issued for starting on April 1st.
So this should be redrafted then C, because C is requiring that applicant to put in the total number of allowable occupants. And I don't know how they're supposed to know that. That's my point.
We'll take a look at that, but you have the application submitted, and then you have 3 months for the inspection, which determines the occupancy, then you get the license. So
So it's determined by public safety.
Yeah.
So if you want to put public safety slash related to the fire code. You know, if you want to give them a heads up that it's that the determinations by public safety utilizing the fire code. Ms. Robson,
I would suggest,
come up to the desk there. Thank you.
I would suggest that
You, in the application, have the applicant fill out the number of bedrooms and other bedding throughout the house. So number of bedrooms, or maybe just the number of beds. So the police have an idea of, oh, this is what they think they can accommodate. And it gives the police a starting point. And that's something the applicant can answer.
John,
Your Honor, I was thinking that after the word, we have that sentence, the license application form, you could insert and review process and review and inspection process. So it's the license application form plus the review and inspection process will then harvest all of this information.
good.
What else I think you could do with C in the application, following up on Cynthia Robeson's statement, is you could have the number of bedrooms in each dwelling unit and proposed maximum number of allowed occupants. Because once that's in the application, then public safety can, do their follow-up that you just described, John.
Same thing, yeah, that's fine.
Let's put it down, read it that way then, okay? Rhonda,
Yeah, I agree.
okay, council, you good with that?
Yes.
All right, I have 4 votes for that. That passes and moves on. Otherwise, I want to be here. I don't want to be here when the sun comes up. Number of allowable. And we're working towards it right now. Okay, moving right along. We're going to now go to a signed statement certified by the following. Which is number 153.
My suggestion, this says that this is going to be this signed statement, and my suggestion was that the entire application should be signed and certified, not just this portion.
Rhonda, feedback?
I mean, yeah, obviously the entire application should be certified as being true and correct. I do think that it's worthwhile to have these 4 points be included with the application. So maybe we just indicate that statements certifying the following, and then it'll just be included in the application.
Okay. You're good with that first statement part? Okay,
I'm good with the entire application being certified.
okay. Right, now go to, you want to talk about each bedroom has a hardwired working smoke detector, and I see your comments are you want one that states hardwired.
That was a suggestion, once again, attributable to Rick Newman, architect on the planning commission. And I thought that was a good idea, although I know nothing about smoke alarms, so I don't know if you have to have a battery backup if the power goes up or whatever, so. I just thought it was a good addition.
John?
Mayor.
Yeah.
A hardwired means that it's both. It's
Right.
a hardwired and there's a battery backup in the unit itself.
So I supported Rick's suggestion.
Okay. And the licensee or the local agent will check these devices no less than each 6 months.
Again, that's just me suggesting that we put the licensee on notice.
Okay, you good with that, council?
I'm not
Mr. Shield?
a fan of the hardwired. I mean, having gone through a recent building code inspection that was battery that was typically expected, battery in every room. I feel like that's adequate, it meets the code, and that potentially requiring hardwire requires extra cost, expertise that may be too unnecessarily obstructionist. I'm not a fan of it. Doesn't mean it's that big. I mean,
The only thing is once it's done, it's done. You are not gonna have extra. You're not gonna have extra, you rewire it every year, but Mr. Wagner?
I only wonder if older homes can even do that without a whole lot of rewiring.
John?
I don't know.
It is an expense. Definitely.
Rhonda?
Nowadays, there's so many wireless smoke alarms that can still communicate with each other and do the universal noise. When there's something on one floor, they all go off. I don't know that hardwired is necessarily, I mean, it's ideal, I guess, but I agree that it would be difficult, especially in older homes, to make that happen.
yeah, that's something I'd like to hear from owners and from the public on this one. So
But I think we can take care of this pretty easily. Miss Demore, are you okay, or would you want us to pursue hardwire?
No, I, again, not an area of expertise for me. I'm looking out for safety. So what's ever optimal for
Are you
safety?
okay with eliminating the word hardwire and just leaving it the way it is?
I am.
Mr. Shield, Mr. Shield says yes, Mr. Wagner.
Yes, based on what Rhonda said about advanced technology and.
Right. But I don't know how you're gonna adopt,
Yeah, I don't
get
know.
into an ordinance when things are so constantly changing. Mr. Moore, you okay with eliminating the word hardware?
Yeah.
Done. Moving along, the word licensee. Or support Mr. Wagner
I'm sorry.
on line 156.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, moving right along on line 159 and 160. About the property is insured. Mr. Moore, you listed the applicant should include a certificate of insurance, including the policy number and expiration date. Rhonda?
That would be pretty standard. And I also think maybe we want to include a notification that the insurance shall not be canceled unless it is replaced during the license period.
You speak that one more time?
I can try. We want to include a certificate of insurance would be a good thing because then we would have proof of it. But then we also want to ensure or put a statement in there that the insurance will not be canceled during the license period unless it is replaced with like insurance.
So one of the concerns I have is about prescribing required policy limits. I'm just concerned that, you know, if we don't have a requirement like that, somebody could have very low limits and that could be a problem in the event of a loss. What are your thoughts on that, Rhonda?
Well, if there's a loss, it's a loss to the owner of the STR. I mean,
Well, not if
unless there's a loss of life or a loss of property of the renter, which could happen. And those limits should maybe be prescribed, but I would think that an owner would have an interest in insuring their own STR for a value at least and we may need to do some minimums as to general liability type stuff for premises cases. But again, they would also have an interest in that.
But what are you're stating we possibly need something regarding injury or death to the license to the tenant, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we might need to have protection. And the other issue we have too is some insurance companies may view this as a business and then say that there's no coverage. So it's important for us to know and be assured that the tenants of these short-term rentals are protected.
How much money are we talking about needing
for limits, you mean?
for limits? I mean, you need to come up with a number.
Well, maybe she doesn't have to come up with them right on the spot. She might want to consider.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be some thought about this. I mean,
Yes.
it's 250, 500 per occurrence, or if it's 150, 250. I mean, I haven't looked at that issue to see what kind of insurance is required in these circumstances, but there definitely needs to be some, and it wouldn't hurt to have a minimum.
John,
Let me check with a couple insurance agents here in town, and find out how they would handle that.
so you'll come back with those numbers at our next meeting on this?
Yeah.
So that could be filled in at that point. You're comfortable, counsel, with that?
Yes.
Okay.
And once again, just to attribute these ideas came from Charlie Wilmot and Doug Buck serving on the planning commission. So
A schematic drawing approved by the city, 165, 166. Let's see, there's a number 16 on that one. And as written.
these were just suggestions that I made that I thought should be added to what the owner and the agent would sign, and I would defer to, once again, to Rhonda's input on that.
I'm having trouble following, but
If you would,
Rhonda,
Yeah, I'm looking at them now. I mean, it kind of goes without saying that the licensee and tenants are subject to the city of Petoskey's code of ordinances. And I believe that some of this language may be elsewhere in this ordinance already. I seem to remember reading it, unless I'm thinking of this footnote. I like the idea that the licensee is ultimately responsible for fines and fees that occur on their property. I don't know that it necessarily would include parking. To me, the parking would follow the vehicle.
these statements are all derived from statements in the ordinance and just designed to have the licensed agent and the owner acknowledge them. Sort of along the lines of what Mr. Michelangelo was proposing earlier about acknowledgement with regard to the application. So again, I defer to you as to which of those you think would be beneficial. To my
John, which do you feel,
Are we talking about the schematic drawing?
I thought that's where we were, and that's why I was kind of
No,
confused.
protecting. We're on footnote 16, right? So
Which is a schematic drawing.
under
Right,
that,
city.
I'm proposing adding 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 as further acknowledgements that the agent and the owner would sign and certify. It's at the bottom of page 8.
Page 8.
That's my page 8. Number 16.
Yeah, I'm assuming these would be in the application, but we're just making it in the ordinance clear that they have to sign.
They're in the ordinance. It was just adding
So that they have to sign.
that they know those things. Yeah, that's what I was trying
Yeah,
to.
I support you.
No.
Yeah.
Those items.
Yeah.
So Derek says.
Gotcha. Derek said what?
I support the making it clear, this is a clarity thing again, that the owner is going to sign an agreement to the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 Tina listed there. They are in the ordinance. We're just asking that it be clear that the owner has to sign and
So
acknowledge
5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 would be included in after 4, basically.
Yeah,
It would go on to that. Rhonda, your feelings on that?
All right, so the idea is just that this is part of, I gather what we're putting together is kind of like a statement that is signed at the same time as the application or as part of the application acknowledging all these things. Is that
Yes.
what we're going for?
right,
Yeah.
because 7E says a signed statement certifying the following, and there's 1 through 4. And then this 5 through 9 is proposed to be added to that for further acknowledgement.
I'm just looking at 5 through 9, just 1 second.
Take your time.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
John,
Yes, I'm fine.
counsel? Good.
Yes.
Fine. Okay, so after 4 comes 5 through 9, which are listed on as page 8 of a draft. All right. Now, the next one is at 168 is a copy of current deed for the property, etc. Does anybody have any concerns on that paragraph, which is F?
No, there's no comments there.
No, I know, but maybe the rest of the council has a comment. I gotta be. No comment, no comment. No. That's fine. Moving on to G, a sign of the prospective licensee standard agreement. Fully comply with the Michigan laws, federal laws. Are you fine with that change that was suggested?
I am, yes.
My suggestion was that we just expand it to fully comply with city, state and federal laws.
You good with that?
Yes.
All right, that red line stuff goes in there. Number 8, 179, was there, you have a question?
Are you going to number 18? I'm sorry.
I'm going
Yeah.
to number 8.
Yeah, so I just want to say that I made an error here in my notes. I make a lot of mistakes, I like to model that for young people. So this should read, for clarity, perhaps this section should merge with section 1517. So if you go to 1517, it's where city council reserves the right to raise, lower, or amend the number of short-term rental licenses at any time. So this number 8 is saying that we're going to establish the cap. And it's sort of kind of in the middle of other things here. So my thought was that should go along with 17. So the cap on the total number of available short-term rental licenses shall be established by resolution of the city council. The city council reserves the right to raise, lower, or amend the number of short-term rental licenses at any time. That was my suggestion for others' consideration.
Rhonda,
I think it makes sense to put those two things together.
okay, John,
That's fine.
so. Sarah, do you have that, or you want her to repeat it one time? No? Okay. So that moved to where?
Number 17. 8 becomes the first part of number 17.
Okay,
Which is line 215.
okay. Gotcha, all right. All right, reading down on, that was number 179, we're taking care of, we're at 182. Properties, situated in residential, that paragraph. I see, Tina, would you wish to speak?
Sure, and I know John agrees with me on this one. I just want to make real clear under this grandfathered section, because I think this is critically important, that upon transfer, licensure lapse, or revocation of any licensed grandfathered property, the property is no longer a grandfathered property and no longer available for short-term rental licensing, just to make that very, very clear. I will say that one suggestion that an attorney constituent made was also to add, she had a reading upon transfer, licensure lapse, or license revocation of any licensed grandfathered property. So either way, I just think that's real important for clarity here.
Are you good with the suggestions that are in red? Are you good with those?
I am, and I'm not asking for this, but we don't need to define grandfathered. That wasn't a list.
I don't think we need
Good.
do we need to define grandfathered?
I'm good with that.
Rhonda, do we need to define grandfathered in? For definition of terms?
I don't think so. I think this little section speaks for itself.
Okay,
This describes.
all right, great. So we'll use the changes that were suggested in red. Moving on, anything on 191-10, number 10, the applicant will not be considered by the city if default for unpaid taxes. You okay with that?
Yes.
Number 11, fee is set forth by the city fee schedule. You're good with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. That will occur, as city manager said, when we have a review in November. Okay, turning the page. Wow. We will be, and we're going to cover a few more of these, and then we will ask for public comment. Number 12, initial and existing license applications. You have a question on that?
Right, I just didn't think it was clear how this works between an initial application where somebody's likely on the waiting list and a renewal. Because the initial wouldn't be considered unless there was a vacancy, so I just was suggesting perhaps a need for more clarity. And I think John proposed something, but I didn't, John, you had grandfathered in there, which I wouldn't use because I feel like that kind of confuses with grandfathered otherwise.
You stated to rewrite 12 as stated, new and grandfathered license applications for short-term rentals shall be processed on a first come, first served basis. John?
Well, you could substitute for grandfather. You have existing licenses now. So you could say new and existing licenses,
For new and renewal.
or new and renewal licenses. We
New and
already have,
renewal
we have 33.
Correct.
We already have 33.
New and renewal.
Yeah.
You good with new and renewal? Yes.
Yes.
Tina?
I think so. What does Miss Rhonda think about where we are?
Rhonda?
I think the intent is clear. I understand why there might be a confusion because, you know, if you have a renewal, it's going to take precedence over an existing waiting list application, even though it may not have been filed first. So I understand why there's a concern about confusion, but I think the intention of is, you know, we process the applications as we receive them. If we have licenses, you get one in the order that we receive your application. If we don't, then you go on the waiting list in the order that you're received. I think
Okay.
the intent is clear.
Okay,
That's good. My only concern is that it's clear. I agree with the principle. I just want to make sure it's clear to people.
do you feel it's clear, John?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Council?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, 2 yeses.
I'm still ruminating.
Well, okay, well, there's 3 yeses, so I guess we'll move on. We can come back. It's clear to you.
Treat them all as first come, first serve, regardless if they're existing or a new. I mean,
They go on the
that's the
list.
intent, like Rhonda said.
Okay. Next on 13, it's number 200. Concerns. Please, you want to read your comments or?
Sure. So under this paragraph, my question was how it interacts with section 15.4, parent 6. Because there it indicates that no further notice need be provided to the licensee. It seems unclear what action, if any, the city is to take to quote, deem it to be complete. Since the application can amend until December 30th now, if no notice is required by the city, how would the applicant know to amend? And so I think John came up with an idea. John came up with a proposal. The city clerk shall inform an applicant of any deficiencies in their application submittal.
That's good.
Yeah.
You accepted? Accepted. Got it. Sarah?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Good, okay. Moving on to the next statement, once deemed to be complete. Any comments? No comments on that one? No. Next, on 210, part 15. When a licensed property is transferred, the license will expire upon transfer of the property. Good with that. Now we have a question on 212.16. Licensee becomes void upon property transfer and upon expiration of the revocation by the city under this charter.
It was just for clarity and John thought it was fine, I think, right, John?
Yes.
So the word property transfer and upon expiration. Rhonda, you good with that?
It just seems to be repetitive of 15.
Mhm. Yeah,
because the license is already expiring when the property is transferred. So I don't know if we need to add upon property transfer and upon in that next 16, because it's already covered in 15.
But it's addressing licenses becoming void. I mean, maybe the two could be merged together.
so the license will expire upon transfer of the property. Or what?
I think you could keep 16 and lose 15.
There you go.
Okay. Are you good with that, council?
Yes.
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 Okay, 15 is gone. 16 carries on with the inclusion of property transfer and upon. Number 215, 17, city reserves the right. You good with that? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Now. For the sake of those that wish to speak to council, has to be in regard of what we have just covered. If it's something involving waiting lists, regulations, violations and penalties, appeals, or a conflict and severity clause, enactment and effective date, I'm going to tell you, you have to wait. Is there anybody that wishes to speak to council at this time on that was just covered, Sarah? You might have people want to speak.
Yeah, there's a lot on there, so.
Bring them on.
Yeah. Hold on. So. I don't know if you want to let people speak. There's a lot of chat going on, John.
I don't think we're here, Chad. I want to hear from the people, I guess. What?
Okay, that's fine. I'm just saying these are comments. So if you
Yeah.
don't want to read them aloud, then they're gonna all have to raise their hands. So.
Let's go right now to who wants to speak first.
Yep, I'm trying.
Um,
Are we supposed to raise our hand if we'd like to speak?
So she's live. Mallory, you're live.
Yes.
Speak.
Awesome.
Full address.
My name is Mallory Powell. My husband, John, and I own the property located at 215 West Mitchell Street, which is zone B3.
Okay.
So thank you for your time and the opportunity to address this very nuanced and important topic. I want to start by saying that my husband and I fully understand and for the most part support the need to regulate this industry and acknowledge that this is a present concern for not only the quality of our neighborhoods, as well as obviously a very real housing shortage, particularly in residential areas. However, in reviewing all of the proposed changes, we are concerned that currently the plan really isn't addressing the problem at hand that's in your kind of central goal. And in fact, it's only to the detriment of legitimate business owners who should, it seems, have right to use their properties in that way, just by right of being zoned commercial. So if I may, just a little background that I think is relevant. Myself and my husband, John, are year-round residents. We have been lucky enough to call Petoskey our home for just over 2 years. We actually moved here from Chicago in the summer of 2021 after having been longtime tourists. Long having loved this area, we were inspired to create the type of accommodations that we were frustrated not being able to find as tourists. I spent the better part of a decade owning a luxury wedding planning business. So unfortunately, an occupational hazard of that is that I'm kind of a hotel snob. We also wanted to travel with our dog. So we were looking for those kind of properties, which honestly have been identified as a hole in this market that, as someone who understands that this market may detract people from coming here. But when we decided to move here, it was with that sole purpose of creating that accommodation in mind. We were already well aware that there were exacting regulations and zoning procedures, and that there was a real housing crisis that we needed to consider. And we made that decision knowing that we would need to wait for the right property to become available, however long that may be. So the following summer, after living here for almost a year, we were lucky enough when that property finally hit the market. It had the proper zoning. It wasn't taking away from any existing housing as it was an existing commercial space. And it was surrounded by other businesses on a main thoroughfare and other businesses that I should mention would benefit from having it be a rental. It also has its own dedicated parking lot. So we purchased that property, but I think it's important to mention that we only purchased it after confirming directly with the city clerk that it was a permissible use. I should mention that no qualifications were offered to us at that time. There were no mention that there were any plans to amend, update, or change regulations, and no warning that we would be susceptible to losing that right to getting a license via ongoing legislation if we did not immediately apply for a short-term rental license. So our property is zone B3. It's presently a 2-bedroom condo on top, and we're working to convert the lower level commercial space to an additional amount of sleeping quarters. Our goal will primarily be the full buyout rental of the entire property, a gap that we have identified as not existing in this market, but also leaving the option to rent them separately as needed or if they are available. As we were not yet prepared to open before the moratorium and no reservations or stipulations were provided to us by the city at the time of purchase, we had not applied for a license to short-term rent with any immediacy. My understanding now, after working with the city, is that the property needs to be ready for inspection and ready to be rented before we can even initiate that application process. This is a huge risk when you're considering that the only people who are able to rent as of right now are those that have properties in a business district, because that is intrinsic to the value due to simply supply and demand. We paid a premium because a property that can rent is more valuable because it does not exist. So the cap, obviously, and the timing of when you can apply are especially germane when we consider those things. I also do want to mention that we did file a business license in March of last year, indicating our intention to eventually file for a short-term rental license when the property was ready to do so. I should also mention that for whatever reason, the license was held back, though our check was cashed without any notification via email or phone, reasoning for which has not been offered to me. And I have to say that in combination with sort of the carte blanche approval we were given at the time of purchase makes this feel a little bit obstructionist. I'm not saying that it is, but that is how it reads. Especially as this was a purely income-based investment. And with many things, including furnishing and occupancy and all of these things, significant investment is going to be required up front. So there needs to be a clear process for that, and it needs to be fair. So long-windedly, I'm saying this is all to say that I think by most standards, we would be considered your ideal short-term rental applicants. We are a fully functioning filed LLC. This is currently my full-time job. I'm a proven hospitality business owner, having owned a successful luxury wedding planning company in Chicago for the better part of a decade. We hope that it will one day also be my husband's sole income. We are full-time residents. We waited for a property that followed your already exacting specifications and would allow us to enhance the community with our business rather than take away from available housing. This is really important to us. We are surrounded by businesses on a main thoroughfare. We have dedicated parking. That said, I think it's important to note that the proposed changes, primarily the arbitrary cap on licenses, is only regulating us. It's not affecting the housing crisis in the slightest. In fact, rather than working on this topic in particularly and spending all the time to add additional clarification to an already, some would argue, over-regulated sect, we should be focusing and directing that energy towards and resources and time and expertise to solving the problem, and rather than adding nuance to something that really doesn't need it. So if you humor me for a second, and I promise I'm going to wrap up soon, I'm happy to illustrate the point. There are presently 33 licenses for short-term. I'm sorry, of those 20 are grandfathered in residential areas. 13 of those licenses are issued in allowable business districts, and among those 13,
there's a moratorium on it. Are you in the commercial district?
I am, and I promise there's a really poignant point that I'm offering, even with the moratorium.
Make it within 1 minute, please.
You absolutely have it. Of the 13 business licenses, so people that have applied for businesses that weren't grandfathered in, 8 of them are actually in 3 addresses or multiple units, meaning that we're actually talking about regulating 8 licensees here, 8, which is one of which is the Hotel Perry that owns a property. So to me, this shows you're already regulated. The issue here is the residential areas. And, honestly, we have no stake in that. That only makes my
I'm
property.
confused. Are you in the residential area or?
No,
you
we're in a
commercial?
business area, but as our property is not ready, we're basically being told that there's an arbitrary cap of 40 that's going to be assigned. And our property
We
may
haven't
not be ready.
decided, that hasn't happened. That has not.
Oh, totally. Sorry, I'm a little
Okay.
fired up. So I'm just
Right.
trying to express, there is a worry that that would be regulating only people who should
Right.
be the people you want to do this. Like, we take the regulations very seriously. We have a lot of stake in it as well, but
Yeah.
really feels to me it's affecting people like us at this point
Mhm.
and not the people that affect the housing crisis.
You will have an opportunity at a public hearing on this, at the next city council meeting, if we hope to get through this tonight yet, to put it on to the
Absolutely.
next agenda, okay?
And again, apologies for I
No.
just think the texture is important to kind of,
Yeah. I appreciate your comments.
thank you very much.
Next. Last two. Albert Moss. Albert Moss,
You want Albert Moss?
yes.
Hello,
Mr.
Salvador
Moss.
Moss, 510 Hillcrest. Just a couple points. The discussion about notifying nearby residences and residentials, I think that is not necessary because it's going to be, as this lady just said, within the business district. I also think it's not going to, the concern that you guys had about competing with workforce housing, since you are going to limit it, and it's already in the district and the days rental going up to 45. Those are all good decisions because just by limiting where it is, you're going to take care of that. The hardwire battery, though, I think is something you want to talk to your public safety about. It's not just a concern of notifying other smoke detectors in the home. People, what do you do at 3 o'clock in the morning if your smoke detector starts ringing and it's not real? I think a lot of us have done it. It's not a good idea, but you take the battery out. And I don't think you want I think you want to consider that hardwire. And then all these things, if the rental agreement is on site that spells out everything, so when public safety or whatever arrives, they know exactly. Having that on site would be very helpful. And I do think you want to look at the terms occupancy, overnight guests. Let's take a building that has a huge open space in one bedroom. It can have an overnight guest of 1 or 2, but it can have an occupancy by fire code of 30 people. And so I think you do really want to define overnight guests and occupancy as 2 different things. What the fire code allows for a building or a space may be much more than you want to allow for a number of people sleeping there. So I just think that's something you should consider. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you. John, any comments? No. Moving on. Next, yes, the next gentleman. Where's Cole? Yeah, Colin. Yes, Mr. Cole, Dr. Colin.
I think I unmuted myself.
So what's up?
How are you? So can I speak now? Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So first, council, board, and guests, I'd like to say I appreciate being here, the opportunity to be here. And may all find everyone well here who's at the meeting tonight. I heard and I value the helpful discussion. I don't know the young lady that was just talking about moving from Chicago, but I reiterate that she had a very good very good points that she made. I appreciate the discussion on occupants versus guests. I've listened very carefully to everything. The need for workforce housing, the license transfer. As it was mentioned, I am Dr. Cullen. And we purchased our property 102, 104. It's a duplex here on Division Street in Petoskey, Michigan, under the name of Petoskey Real Estate LLC. We are currently exploring how we can be legally permitted to offer our home to summer guests on short-term rental basis. It's important for everyone to know here tonight that we love the city of Petoskey. We've been here for a decade almost now. And I have a lot of very affluent friends and family who visit and stay at our duplex multifamily home. I can say prior to having the knowledge of short-term rental not being permitted, it's very interesting. I do have multiple sclerosis, so my voice is a little hoarse. But about 2 years ago, I think that everyone would value the understanding. I was arrested and I was imprisoned for a day and fined from the city of Petoskey for offering our home on short-term rental basis through Airbnb and VRBO. I know that there's been discussion a little bit on how short-term rental basis can influence noise. I feel that this, if anything, this arrest was both traumatic and chaotic. Sorry, go ahead.
We have a process for short-term rentals. There's an application process, and I believe that was suggested to you in the past. I know it was.
I never knew about this. I was more recently informed that
You're in the district you are in. It is not legal in the district you're in.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
if there's something, an application that needs to be filled out, I'm happy to have filled this out, you know?
It will not qualify for short-term rental. I would suggest you rent on over a monthly basis would be the alternative that you have.
Okay. Who do we go to at the city in order, if we were considering one side of the home, the duplex, one side offering it on short term during the summer?
It won't work because you're in the wrong district. You have 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
You've had 4.5 minutes, and I got to limit it to 5 minutes to get through this.
That's fine. I don't need to discuss anything further. All I can say is that, you know, given my multiple sclerosis, we could seriously use this small income stream that can be generated through a legitimate short-term rental while courtiering guests who actually buy things in Petoskey and fill the city's coffers. Thank you.
I suggest you look at a long-term rental. Next person, please. Thank you for your input. Next point. Is there some people that want me to read something? She already spoke, and those aren't. Move down to. Somebody stated that Rhonda made a lot of sense. Okay. Okay. All right, that's it. Does anybody in the public here wish to speak to council at this moment on this? If you do, step up to the mic is green. Give us your full name, full address, and you'll have 5 minutes to speak to council, sir. Anybody? Moving right along, we're now going to waiting list. Request of putting in, or your suggestion, John, was insert after received by city. Licensees who fail to renew their license by the deadline will be placed at the bottom of the waiting list.
I was just suggesting that, I was just suggesting that for purposes of clarity, somewhere it should indicate that a licensee who loses its license or fails to timely renew goes to the bottom of the waiting list, if that is our intention. In other words, the fact of a previously pre-existing license does not advance that licensee on the list when it seeks to once again access a license.
And I see insert. John, you put that up?
Yes.
Are you good with inserting licensee will receive renewal, etc.,
Yes.
as suggested? You're good?
I'm not sure what was suggested.
It was suggested that insert after received by the city, licensees who fail to renew their license by deadlines will be placed on at the bottom of a waiting list.
I can live with it.
Okay, Mr. Moore, moving right along.
Do we need to check in with council? She's lit up.
One other suggestion on this, I would indicate the applicant shall be placed on the waiting list in the order in which their completed applications were received by the city.
Okay. In the order that they are received by the city. You're good with that, council?
Yep.
Yes, that's good. Thank you, Rhonda. That's a good addition. Very good. The bottom, it says a suggestion was made at the bottom of 229. Available licensees shall be determined as of January 1 each year. City planner said yes. You agree with that? You agree? You agree?
Yes.
Is it, you're good with it? Rhonda, are you good with that?
The only concern that I have, I mean, is if the goal is to say that, okay, this is how many licenses are available for the applicants or the people on the waiting list, whichever it happens to be, I'm fine with this. I just don't want it indicated that, you know, the licenses themselves will be determined by January 1. If we have a deadline of December 30th to turn in applications, the city's going to need some turnaround time to look at those issues.
Yes, and public safety, I mean, they don't do inspections the day they get the applications. So it was based on the director's idea and thought to have all inspections done within that first quarter. So the renewal period is November 1 to December 30. And then public safety has January through March 31 to do the inspections.
For renewal.
Any of them, regardless if it's new or renewal.
But are they then they're allowed to continue without inspection?
Well, their license is an annual license, whether it's now or I think it's proposed annual license on the
But
new.
it's annual license that ends December.
It doesn't, it's not calendar year, it's
not.
April 1 to March
If
31.
Good with that.
Well, then what would be the proper date here? Would it be April 1?
Right, so I mean, what's the intent is the actual physical license, like Rhonda is saying, January 1, me issuing licenses, that's not feasible.
As of April 1.
I think the intent is that.
Yeah.
And on April 1st, we'll know how many licenses we have and how many are available to people on the waiting list. And we won't know that until April 1st.
So we could put licenses available to to people on the waiting list shall be determined as of April 1.
April 1.
Not
If
January.
that's more clear.
Got that, Sarah.
Mhm.
Okay, you're good with that, council?
Yes, sir.
Moving on to regulations. First line says, it's 233, a license, short term shall be designated well, shall be designated a local agent as defined by this chapter. Now there's a question on the next one, line 235. 2. Maximum capacity.
My question was, is this required to be posted in the unit? And I think John suggested the license number, maximum occupancy, owner and agent contact information shall be posted inside the short-term rental.
I like that.
It's got maximum occupancy twice. I don't think you meant that. Good, somebody beside me is making mistakes.
Are we talking about line 235?
We are,
Talking about line 235 and 6, yes. Do you have a comment on that?
Yeah.
Please step up to the podium.
podium.
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so that's about advertising. So they want that information is required on the, if they're posting it,
Yeah.
you know, on a website. So I added copy to clarify that. So at the line, it'll say, second line says occupancy and maximum capacity. And in the ad or posting site.
Well, I think she talked of inside the short-term rental as well.
We do require that in the, is that another place? I mean,
That's this place right now.
No, it's not in another place that I saw, Cynthia.
No.
That's why I
Okay.
suggested adding it.
because it, you know, I mean, that's standard procedure to always post that, you know, hotel rooms. have to
But
post.
we are going to have it in.
That's fine, but this was written, and John can correct me if I'm misinterpreting, but this is how we interpreted it in creating it. It's specifically about the advertising. We want the notice there for people looking. You know, to see, can I rent this, or does it have enough beds? We want them to be truthful about the license number and the maximum occupancy and maximum capacity
Rhonda,
for that line.
So wait, just point of clarification. Were you suggesting that some language should be added there that's missing?
Well, since you. I don't think it needs, I think it's might be obvious without, as long as you understand that we're talking about the advertising of the property.
Yeah.
That would, Rhonda would be able to clarify that.
It's
Rhonda,
Yeah, I like the idea of having it in the advertisement so that people know what it is that they're you know, signing up for. I also like the idea of posting it in the unit itself so that there's no question that they were clearly aware of it because it's in the advertisement and it's posted in the unit.
And they also want the license number because that helps the city follow through and make sure that, you know, what particular STR that is.
so it'd be 2, and would there be another one involved with that then for the advertisement piece?
No, this is it.
Is that good?
Well, you might want to add one that says these items have to be posted in the unit.
So that's the suggestion
Mhm.
under 15 6. A new number 5. How about, well, that's what the
Well-
suggestion was. Why don't we? Right here.
I think I'd make it as
A new
3,
number 5.
since you're.
Yeah,
might
Why
make
don't we
sense to
push
me.
it down to, why don't we do it as a 3 and lower those other ones, okay?
yes. Yeah. And I think,
So John's suggestion,
What if we just rewrite the sentence to say that the short-term rental, let's just, let me rewrite it to include both advertisement and posted inside. So I know what you're talking
the only
about.
thing is, if you put it 2 different ones, it's easier to understand.
that's true.
It's this on this one and it's this, and it also has to be here. You know, you throw it together and people go, well, I read that, but I didn't realize it was also. But I think if we did number 5, like you said, or
Number
move it to 3, I think it would be more there's no question then.
That's fine.
All right,
You could also, you could also do it as a second sentence
Yes.
to number 2 and just say this information shall also be posted within the rental unit.
okay. Got it. Council, you good with that? Good with that? Good. Yeah.
And just
Okay.
apologies, Cynthia, because I think my inserting it there made it confusing, right? It was sort of a separate issue, but since it was talking about those things, it made me think about posting, so.
Okay. I like it, but I'm fine going with the group and saying it's, you're gonna do it this way. That's fine.
And you also, we should also capitalize local agent under section 1 of the same section 15.6.
Okay. 238. 3 short-term rentals shall be inspected annually to meet the state of building code, health. Their IPMC, fire. That's good, everybody.
Yes.
Moving to 242. For all short-term rental leases and tenants. You have a comment on that?
This we already discussed. This is just the cleanup of tenants versus occupants. And
Okay,
so that's already on everybody's radar. This is just the first place that I saw tenants appeared in the document.
are you saying leave it or cross it?
I think there's gonna be a conference about the optimal approach in terms of whether we're gonna use tenant or occupant. So,
Okay, Rhonda,
As long as it's consistent throughout, I don't think it matters
okay,
that much.
okay. I'm hoping we can get through this last bit here yet tonight. 15.7. 246.1, I see there's a feedback on that. After the phrase multiple municipal civil infraction insert as determined by the resolution of city council.
so I was just confused because we've got a civil infraction here with a fine. And I just didn't know how it interacted with the other violation fines. It was unclear to me.
John,
That's why I suggested that that they have to find the municipal city infraction under this ordinance. The fine be identified in the city, your annual city resolution regarding fees and fines.
Rhonda,
Yeah, I'm fine with it being a municipal civil infraction. We may need some language that, a finding of a municipal civil infraction or a non-finding of a municipal civil infraction doesn't necessarily mean that the license won't be revoked if the city deems it appropriate. I mean, I don't want the idea that, okay, we can just pay the civil or the municipal civil infraction and then continue with whatever we're doing that's a violation. We don't want to change one remedy for another.
That's my concern, is how that provision interacts with the section 4 violations. It just wasn't clear to me.
so
I think some of this has to be problem solved through drafting, there's.
Well, my suggestion would be that I think this section here, because it's gonna require, this is enforcement. That maybe Sarah and Shane work with Rhonda on this procedure. Okay, because this is really gonna come down to an enforcement issue.
mhm.
So I'd like to have, and I don't expect Rhonda's gonna do it tonight, but it would be nice having her walk through it and then maybe suggest a process that would make it very efficient for the enforceability of the ordinance.
Council, are you good with that? Having John, Shane, Rhonda, Sarah, yeah, or you, whoever you guys pull it together. So that would be, you're gonna work on this and bring it back.
Yes.
And that's all the way through 276E. Will that affect first reading at the next city council meeting?
We likely will not be ready for that.
That's right. So you'll bring back the discussion then at that next city council meeting for this piece,
We'll bring back updated red line
The draft.
draft,
Yeah.
Yes.
and you'll have this intact, okay. All right, good city,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think there's there's gonna be more discussion. We can have it later or now. So it sounds like that.
there'll be two more discussions, probably three at this point. Next city council will do it won't be the public hearing, it won't be it'll be a reading of, okay? Discussion of. No motions. All right, looking at the appeals piece of it,
Oh, wait a minute.
what?
Yeah.
We just stated that this will be done by the city manager, city attorney
Section
and our.
4.
attorney.
Well,
We just skipped over those.
yeah, I mean, do you not want our input on section 4? Because I don't know what others' perspectives are, but I certainly have some concerns in this section that
Okay,
might inform.
okay,
Yeah.
your concerns. Short-term rental, revocation of the following circumstances. First violation shall be a written warning to the licensee. What you just to comment on that?
Yeah, I got a constituent input with the degree of clarity this ordinance provides. Why do we begin with a written warning instead of a fine? A licensee could have 2 violations within a single license year with only a single fine and then renew. Given the amount earned nightly by short-term rentals, this is insufficient. That was the input.
I would like to comment on that.
Sure.
I think every public safety, when we hired our code inspector, it was with the understanding that we would work with people to make corrections. And that the first time he comes out to a trailer parked in the roadway for 3 days, the first time somebody didn't cut their grass, we are working with people and doing notifications, but we are not nailing them with a fine. Is that correct, city manager Horn?
Yes.
That's our process, is work with people before you hammer them. And I think the first violations should be written notification of a warning. And if then you go to the second, then we start setting fines. But I believe first time fines does not stand with what we are doing in the city, whether it be public safety did the inspections before, or now we have a code enforcer. As you remember, we went through that whole checklist of what they had, some of their accomplishments and what they did. They were just looking for people to correct this stuff. That was the goal. And I guess if I see somebody can correct something, I don't see finding them first time.
Okay.
But that's my opinion. I don't know. Rhonda?
I mean, it's really a council call as to how strict you want to be in terms of enforcement. It might be beneficial to indicate that, 2 violations in, or keep like a rolling tab. So it's not like, okay, if you have someone that's doing a violation every single year, then maybe they don't get a quote unquote first break, especially if it's a repeat of the same kind of thing. But that's something we can work out when we're restructuring this section. Is there something that we can do to blend appropriately a fine and notice so that they have their due process, they have their opportunity to correct, but we're not allowing repeated violations just because they're making more money doing that than they are doing it correctly.
Right.
Matt, my one, thanks, Mayor. My one suggestion is, Derek, would be that I'd like to see if there is we're talking about carrying over, that there'd be a period, if they go a year or whatever that period is, 18 months, 2 years, without a violation, that it could be erased, go back to 0. So I like the idea of, as you however you sort that out, consider that there would be a period of sending things back.
a fresh start for them on violations of that violation. Mr. Moore,
Oh, I don't know that we're gonna talk about amounts of fines tonight. It doesn't look like it. So I will save that for another discussion. And then just the other points I had here, I think were about notice. How is notice given and deemed received? And I guess I would just say to Rhonda, it seems like there's a lot of instances in this where there's a requirement for notice to be given and received. And sometimes in these type of agreements, there's a blanket paragraph that sort of sets out, notice is deemed received when, et cetera. I just think it would be valuable here, rather than repeating it in these different provisions, to have a blanket notice like that makes clear what is the receipt of notice or the giving of notice. I mean, I know Mr. Icoangelo said it's in writing, but again, that's not sufficient to deem that it's been received. So I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah. So yes, you ordinarily have a provision that says notice is given when it's sent. For example, in this instance, you would use the address provided on the application. And you could do it by mail and it's deemed accepted. And if you're concerned about, if you don't want to do it the day of mailing, it could be, 7 days after mailing, or personally delivered. I mean, however it is, you need to get the notice to the applicants. We can kind of work through something like that. But it's not uncommon to say it's this address and then either regular mail or certified mail if we think it's important enough to protect rights and interests.
Yeah, I would appreciate that being considered.
I support.
and I even find with certified mail, it isn't gonna happen very often that we're gonna have to send those. But I think I think it'll cover our tails as far as saying it was delivered, it wasn't just mailed. Well,
I would just defer to Rhonda to make.
they're gonna make suggestions on
Yep.
that. Is there anything else on that part down through 276E? Are you good with them working on that? Okay, moving on to appeals. 33, after the word insert written. A written notice. Are you good with that?
Where are you?
We're on line 281.
I mean, I can just speak broadly to my concerns about this section, defer to Rhonda. It seems to me that the licensee should have the burden of proof on appeal. The way this is written is so broad. I mean, it talks about extenuating circumstances. It just seems extremely broad to me, and I'm wondering if it can be more narrowly tailored, and also concerned about, giving direction to the zoning board of appeals in terms of, what's the standard of appeal here for them to follow, a preponderance of competent material and substantial evidence or whatever. So just those kind of actually legal, I think, concerns around this appeal process.
Rhonda?
Yeah, I would agree that it makes sense at the point of 3 violations and such that they're subject to revocation. It makes sense at that point to put the onus on the licensee to say, okay, here's why I deserve or should deserve to keep a license. And we just need to be sure that the timing of this doesn't interfere with the timing of the license. If this happens in November or December, I assume that if their license is revoked in, say, March, that gives the opportunity still for people on the waiting list or people that are looking for licenses to have licenses. It's just something to kind of keep in the back of your minds when you're looking at this issue.
The balance of the questions or concern that I have, you have, Rhonda, at 35 through 37. Those were essentially, I feel no need for you to respond to me about it tonight, but just so you have the overview of what my concerns were about the appeals section. You guys have them as
I
well.
see that our city planner stated it was acceptable for your comment on 35. The burden of proof is on the licensee. 36. The suggestion was removing this sentence starting with the word extenuating. Rhonda?
I mean, extenuating circumstances by definition should be something that's out of the ordinary and not foreseeable or out of the control of the licensee. I don't know that I necessarily have a problem with this definition as it is.
You feel
But
it in there?
I think in application, it's one of those things where you're kind of going to know it when you see it. We don't have any examples right now of a situation where we have to apply this. It might be something down the road that might need tweaking. But I think given the fact that they're revoked after 3 violations, that's even as broad as it's written, it's probably a pretty high standard for them to meet.
Could we leave that sentence in or just eliminate it then? Extenuating circumstances. 292, 293. Should we just eliminate it?
I would even say must include as opposed to may include if it's going to be in there, just because again, extenuating circumstances has to be something fairly significant. If we eliminate it, it's not going to change the scope of the review.
Right. So you'd be comfortable saying remove it?
No,
Are you saying remove it or leave it in?
I think.
Rhonda?
It could be either way. I think leaving it in lets the owners of the STR know kind of what we're looking for in terms of a standard to meet in order to establish their position.
We'll leave it in.
So I would probably leave it in, but
Must.
yeah.
With the corrections.
I'd be interested to know if there's a standard would be more clear or not as broad. So just for your brainstorming.
Yeah, we can look.
Okay. Very good. Next. 295-4. What was the question, the comment?
We've already talked about it.
We talked about it. Okay, moving to the last 2 sections, conflict and severability clause. Nothing, counsel. I see it as is. Rhonda. Section 15.9.
I think it's fine. It's pretty standard.
Okay, in the last section before end of discussion, section 15.10, enactment.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Back up one.
Going back, 303, line 303 to 307.
Correct. Starting at line 303. I don't know that we want to say all ordinances, resolutions, or orders that conflict with this are repealed. We may want to say that these provisions control as it relates to short-term rentals over any other provisions.
John,
You don't want a circumstance where we're repealing whatever, a drug ordinance or something because there's something in there that is different from what's here. I mean, I can't think of anything right now, but I don't want to do a blanket repeal of anything, even if it's not STR related.
What statement would you use instead?
Yeah, she can wordsmith.
Would you wordsmith that for us?
Sure.
Make note of that. Okay. The last is the effective enactment date. it's boilerplate, isn't it? Shall take place 14 days after. You're good with that, council? Yes. Okay. Last piece of this. People wish to speak to council. They have the opportunity to. This will come back for a total draft review at next city council meeting.
I can't promise that. There's a lot of
Okay.
changes here.
How about this?
Destination.
It will come back sometime in November. Is that good?
Yeah.
It will come back to city council in November. It will be it will be a read and discuss only. Then it would go to the next meeting, city council, first reading, and then it would go to the next meeting would be second reading, public comment. So there are going to be 3 more meetings where people can weigh in. Does anybody on the in the public wish to speak right now that is here in the audience? Is there anybody online that wishes to speak or make comment?
We would like to ask just a quick question that we did.
One second. She's pulling it up. Okay, your full name, full address.
This is Mallory Powell again, 215 West Mitchell Street, B3. My question goes back to the discussion that you guys had with regarding to the occupancy and capacity and how that would be determined.
Yes.
To the point of the council earlier, my first question was, it does appear that that needs to be listed in the application. And I think by nature of the fact that we're talking about people who are owning commercial properties and operating this as a business, it is fair to assume that there's a budget and a fair amount of investment that may go into converting these properties, not only for the best guest experience, but also to be to code and to everything that you guys are hoping to regulate. And that requires the investment of buying furniture that may involve the investment of changing the layout or, renovation of the property, if you will. So I think that it would benefit everyone to have a clearer process and to outline what the maximum occupancy can be. So those calculations can be made for budgeting and planning perspectives. And also, so we're not in a situation where, because we can sell dates ahead of having the license in place, we just cannot have a renter in residence until the license is in place. It allows us to be truthful in our advertising, as well as to not invest in something that ultimately might not be allowed. I feel like across the process, there is a lot of this where if the attention was diverted to how do we make this information more accessible, I'm someone who's poured over the code, and even having read the fire code, I'm still confused on what our occupancy and capacity could be. And I also would be hesitant to have that limit be decided by the city planning commission or the city council, because I feel like capacity should probably be pretty similar to what a hotel room would be. So if a room is 2 queen beds and it's big enough to accommodate a capacity of 4 people, it would not make sense in my mind for that to be regulated by the city council or the planning commission, but rather that there should be some standard that's already in place in adjacent industries that could be applied.
It's not regulated by city council, it's regulated by fire and building codes.
Correct. Accessibility is my challenge. I think the point was made earlier is that like people want, the more that this is a clear process for the actual people who are applying, the more compliant that we will be. My fear is a lack of compliance. And this is someone who has done my due diligence. I am having trouble finding clarity on much of this. And that to me would be a really valuable thing that would help me stay in line, because my fear would be missing something just because it's hard to come by that information. I think that would be the responsibility of the city to at least direct us to where we can efficiently find that information before we make business decisions that have a financial bearing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak to council? That's it. There being no further business, we come before this council. I call this meeting adjourned.
Thanks, Rhonda.